What's going on, everybody? It is that time again, the Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 112 on this Thursday, September 19th, 2024. Josh Callaway, Collin Kennedy here with you on a Thursday. Pretty big game this week, you may have heard. We're going to get Collin's thoughts on said game later. We're also, of course, with Collin here, going to talk about what is another stacked recruiting visitor list for this game. As you'd expect, Oklahoma getting some guys into town for what should be the biggest and best home game that Oklahoma's had in probably close to a decade. So it should be a fun list. We'll get into that as well as some other recruiting news, some good, some bad. We'll break it all down with Collin. We'll also have James D. Jackson on the show at the tail end. Did some in-state recruiting stuff as well. So a packed recruiting Thursday show for you as we mosey on our way into one of the biggest weekends for OU football in quite a while. We're all very excited about it. But Collin, let's go ahead and get into some of the latest news on the recruiting front. Monday night was busy. So Monday night, we'll start with the good. First off, Cortez Mills locked in. Now, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and, Collin, for those listening, I don't think he's really one to pat himself on the back too much here, so I'll do it for him. We did the show a couple weeks ago before he took the trip to Nebraska from Nebraska, Colorado. I asked Collin about it. You were pretty steadfast then. You weren't worried about it. Not something that concerned you. And he took the trip. Obviously, that game was awesome. We all saw, if we either watched it or saw the highlights, Nebraska won. It didn't matter. Cortez Mills announced yesterday or on Monday that he's locked in with Oklahoma, the 4-star wideout from Homestead, Florida. Collin, I guess your reaction to Oklahoma keeping him, but this is kind of what you expected. I mean, this is what you said a couple weeks ago, that you felt like they were going to be able to hold on to him, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, a lot of hoopla around this one, wasn't there? I mean, it just a whole bunch of commotion, and I didn't really feel like there was much reason for it. I said it back then, I'll say it again. We'd all take a free ticket to go watch that Nebraska-Colorado game, and it was awesome. I mean, the atmosphere looked electric. Huskers got a big win over Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders, and the Buffs. It looked like a really cool atmosphere. But, yeah, some folks were like, oh, he's not even remotely thinking about taking the trip. And then we had YouTube recruiting experts being like, well, he's going to flip. And then I'm sitting here like, he told the staff that he wanted to go check out other places. He wanted to experience a couple of atmospheres, but he wasn't necessarily looking to go anywhere. So we're going to talk about a surprise. Like I've tried to be transparent with folks. We'll talk about a surprise here in a second. The way that this thing played out, I mean, I'm not trying to pump anything up. It just played out the way that I thought it would. He did what was within his right to go and check out a program that he liked, got to a big game, got to do something that not a lot of people in their life get to experience and see that type of atmosphere, experience that type of game in person. And I think we all can attest to how much appreciation we have for live in-person experiences when you have the opportunity to do so. So he reaffirms his commitment. Again, I didn't really feel like Nebraska was one that was going to challenge Oklahoma all that much for Cortez Mills, but he likes that staff, and I don't blame him. They've got a really good thing going there out in Nebraska. So Cortez Mills, the class stays intact on the receiver front, and he gets a free ticket out of the equation. I think it's all pretty fair deal.
100%. So a good, he's a good player. We talked about at the time when he committed. He's a 4-star prospect. So a big deal to keep him in. You don't ever want to just take guys for granted. Guys do decommit. We're going to talk about that in just a second. So the fact that you do keep him in-house, Emmett Jones continues to do a really good job on that front. On the other end of the equation, I mentioned Monday night was busy. Also on Monday night, we did get a decommit, not the one that people were worried about. Instead, it was Floyd Boucard, the 3-star defensive lineman from Miami Central High School there in Florida. We talked about the defensive line class that Oklahoma's kind of been stacking in 24 and 25. Floyd Boucard is certainly a part of that. He announced on Monday that he's reopening his commitment. I guess I'll just open it up for you, Collin, just to kind of react to it. And from what you've gathered last few days, kind of what happened here. And is Oklahoma still in the mix? I mean, sometimes that happens. It's rare. But I guess just kind of paint a picture for all of it with Floyd Boucard announcing his decommitment from Oklahoma on Monday.
Yeah, this is the one that surprised me for sure. I think in one hand, you see Cortez Mills be kind of open and transparent with the process that he
Mhm.
wanted to take. I don't really know of another way to put it, but like this Floyd Boucard situation is just strange. So he reveals that he's going to take a visit to Miami. And I think that was not a shock, but relatively out of the blue. Now, I want to reinforce Floyd Boucard, just like Cortez Mills in a sense, said when he committed to Oklahoma, he had plans of taking other visits. So
Yeah.
something like this had always kind of been anticipated. I just feel like it was maybe a little bit quicker or a little bit more unexpected from a timing side of things. And so he reveals this trip to Miami. I'm told he did not go. Like he didn't show up at Miami. And then out of the weekend reveals a decommitment from Oklahoma. And so Gabby Arrudia and I from Inside the U, our go-to guy on the Miami side of the equation, Gabby and I were swapping messages Monday night, Tuesday morning, just kind of being like, what's going on here? What's the deal? Because, I mean, it felt like, obviously, with him being out there in Miami, that the Canes were always going to be a primary presence sort of hovering around Boucard and his commitment to Oklahoma. I think both Gabby and I thought Floyd would end up getting to Miami's campus at some point during the season. We just didn't really know when. He reveals his trip and then apparently doesn't show. What's going on here? So I won't dive into too much of what's next. Our Brian Doan, national recruiting analyst, East Coast expert, he published a story for 24/7 Sports subscribers, 50% off only for Oklahoma fans right now, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of detailed who's in the mix right now on the Oklahoma side of the equation. If Floyd picked up the phone and was like, I want to come back, do I think that they would turn him away? I mean, we're talking about a defensive tackle here at the end of the day with some ability. I feel like they would bring him back. That being said, it kind of feels like, Josh, things are going separate directions to a degree. So at the very least, I do expect Oklahoma to kick a few tires in terms of other defensive tackles out there on the recruiting trail in 2025. Now, the thing I want to mention off of that, it's really hard to say because this is the problem that Oklahoma is now going to face. They're in a similar group of schools that are high-profile programs, yet also desperately seeking defensive line talent. I don't know that I want to call Oklahoma desperate, but the thing is like, let me put it this way. There are several schools that can throw their weight around that are on the hunt actively for more defensive tackle talent in 2025. Right. Some of those schools, Georgia, Texas, the list goes on and on. So I actually had one of our Texas reporters text me when Floyd Boucard decommitted. And when I got the message, I was like, what? Why does he care? And he goes, does this mean Oklahoma's back in the defensive tackle market? I said, yes. And his subsequent message was, great. Now Texas and all these other programs have more competition to deal with.
Right.
That competition also will be facing Oklahoma. So I think it's going to be really fascinating, Josh, to see how Oklahoma tries to navigate a defensive tackle board that not only has a number of prospects already committed, right? So flips are hard to pull off, but you're also trying to maybe pull off a flip or go get one of the few uncommitted prospects that remains out there while trying to take on some of the other big names in the sport. It's going to be really interesting to see. But Floyd Boucard, the last thing, tough loss. I just no other way to put it. A tough loss. We'll see how Oklahoma tries to bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about at the time. I mean, that 25 defensive line group, really solid. I mean, CJ Nixon, of course, we talked about much times, in-state guy, and Trent Wilson, Alexander Shield, like more and more. So, I mean, you have depth there. It's not like, oh my gosh, we only had 2 and now we're down to 1. But like you said, still a significant loss. We'll see if they can dip their toe back in the market and find a replacement or how they go about that. It can be interesting. But a little bit of surprise there. Like you said, 50% off right now, annual membership for the start of SEC play. The start of SEC play is this weekend, of course, with number 6 Tennessee coming to town. The full visitor list for the trip is on the website now. Collin always does a great job getting that together ahead of big visit weekends like this. That's available to our VIP members. So sign up for 50% off, and you can comb through that list. We will go through a little bit of it here. We're not going to hit every name, obviously. But previewing the weekend a little bit. I mean, some of the names that you're watching for in particular, I would think a weekend like this, I mean, is just an unbelievable opportunity to really make some progress. Because again, we'll probably get into this more on the game preview that we'll have tomorrow, but I'm anticipating the best home crowd OU's had in probably close to 10 years. Like it's going to be awesome on Saturday night. So preview the weekend a little bit for us. Well, what are some names you're watching for, and what are some storylines?
Yeah, not that Oklahoma fans needed much more motivation to show up,
right?
But like we literally would not have time in the day to go through every name on this visitor list. It's as stacked a group as I've seen in quite a while, and this is the new norm. If Oklahoma fans want to build a reputation in the SEC as a program that's throwing its weight around in this conference, they have to do it on the recruiting front as well. And just kind of like we were talking about with Cortez Mills, atmospheres matter. We even talked about it, if you'll remember, Josh, on the show a few weeks ago, where a narrow win for Oklahoma over Houston, and recruits weren't worried about it being a bad win. Recruits are like, the stadium was loud and the 2-point was awesome, or the safety was awesome. And these recruits invest. There's going to be a lot of them that are going to be keeping a close eye on what Oklahoma looks like on a quote unquote typical game day, even though we all here know it's not your average game day in Norman, Oklahoma. I want to start with some kind of cool family ties and just like the setting here. Number one, you've got a 2025 wide receiver from the state of Tennessee who's coming to Norman, Oklahoma, and just so happens to be related to a pretty significant figure in Oklahoma football lore. Coleman Kalmus, again, 2025 wideout. I think you can tell at home where I'm going with this. His father just so happens to be Rocky Kalmus, and it sounds like the family's going to be coming down from the state of Tennessee to watch the Vols play in Norman, Oklahoma. Obviously, Pops had some heyday in Norman, so that's kind of cool. And then the other really cool family tie. How quick are we to forget that it was actually Oklahoma to be the first to offer Cooper Witten, the 2027 linebacker safety hybrid out of Liberty Christian in Argyle, and his father, Jason Witten, a Tennessee Volunteer legend.
Yeah.
But Jason's also very close with DeMarco Murray, former teammates with the Dallas Cowboys. And Jason's been to Norman several times. I mean, you and I have seen him 2 years in a row at summer camps in Norman. And so Jason's not only obviously very connected to this Tennessee program, Jason's pretty connected to Oklahoma as well. And so OU being the first to offer his son, Cooper Witten. Cooper is already considered, I believe, a top 25 talent in the early 2027 rankings for us, 24/7 Sports. Freak athlete. I mean, freak athlete and really good football player. Just feels like a Brent Venables guy. Very early Oklahoma-Tennessee battle here shaping up. We'll find out. But I think those are two to touch on really quick. Let's go to 2026 first, Josh. I think the name of the game, without, again, diving into too many of these names, is 2026 linebacker recruiting. So we haven't talked much about 2025 linebacker recruiting, and hopefully we can talk about that here pretty soon. But 2026 is going to be a key cycle from a backer perspective, because we know Oklahoma's got one pledge at the position right now in 2025 in Marcus James. They've missed out on a couple of targets, Christian Jones, Elijah Melendez, both committing pretty recently. So I look at this group, and while there are about 3 to 4 linebackers in 2026 that are high-profile guys coming to this game, the guy I want to mention, we talked about this a few weeks ago when I reported on it initially, Ja'Cory Smith. So Parkview Magnet, he is not only teammates but close friends with Amarian Robinson, Oklahoma's 2025 safety pledge. The two obviously play together, but they take a number of visits together. And Amarian Robinson is essentially going to play host to Ja'Cory Smith for this Oklahoma-Tennessee game. And why that's important, Josh, this guy, 4-star, top 247 talent in 2026, it sounds like it's Oklahoma and Tennessee at the top right now for him. And he basically admitted that to me whenever I went and sat down with him for an interview. Oklahoma and Tennessee battling for a 4-star backer. He's going to be in the stands watching this game. He said basically both programs kind of feel like home. So on-field result probably carries not a ton, but a little bit of weight, right?
Sure.
And again, there are some linebackers on this list that very impressive talents that I'm looking forward to seeing. Sounds like Kevin Ford Jr. is going to potentially be back around campus. That's going to be an interesting one. Zion Robinson. Deuce Gerald's is a defensive lineman out of the Southeast.
What a name.
Yeah. That's awesome. He to me is someone that when we talk a lot about on the show, Josh, Oklahoma's newfound emphasis of recruiting the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
It sounds like Deuce Gerald's is kind of on that list. He's part of that effort. And it sounds like to this point that effort has paid off. Oklahoma in pretty good position with a elite defensive line talent. And then the last name I kind of want to mention, and there's so many in 2026, let alone the rest of the list. The last one I kind of want to mention, it sounds like there's a chance that Jalen Lott and Katie Jones make it to Norman. Jalen Lott, for those who don't know, his father is a Texas legend. One of a number of folks down there in Austin that kind of falls into that athletic lore tier in Austin. But Oklahoma's been recruiting this guy really hard. So OU kind of challenging for a Texas legacy. If he makes it to Norman, that's going to be interesting. And then I'm comfortable mentioning Katie Jones because I put him on the list as a maybe. I talked to some folks, and it sounds like his status as far as making the campus up in the air. Why I want to mention that, Katie Jones, Oklahoma obviously in there, right? We know his father, Kewan, and all of that. But at the same time, Josh Heupel, Kewan Jones, the natural connection there. Tennessee could have a chance to make some noise with Katie Jones in the state of Oklahoma. So that could be another Oklahoma-Tennessee battle in 2026. That, again, if he makes it to campus, going to be interesting to see how that goes. All right, let's move to 2027 real quick. I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that a potentially pair of quarterback targets for OU might be on campus this weekend. Trey Taylor, Peyton Houston, both signal callers who have the attention of the Sooners in 27. With Oklahoma having Kevin Sperry and Jaden O'Neal, 2027 quarterback recruiting, the time is now. And so to have these two on campus potentially for this Tennessee game, very big. And the last guy I want to talk about, even though, again, there are so many others, Brian Swanson is a top 75 early talent in the 2027 rankings. Got to see him a couple weeks ago. I mentioned him briefly whenever we talked about KJ Ford, who was visiting. Brian Swanson's top 75 overall talent, top 8 offensive tackle, if I remember correctly, off the top of my head. I love this guy. South Oak Cliff is an awesome program. That staff does an outstanding job. And Brian Swanson, I've gotten to know one of his offensive line coaches very well, and they rave about this dude. And then he shows up to Oklahoma over the summer and dominates. And it was like, I mean, this is the type of talent you stand on the table for, right? And so him coming back to Norman, huge in my opinion. if we're talking about Oklahoma's ability to stack offensive line talent consistently in the SEC, kind of like quarterbacks, you got to start early. And Brian Swanson's certainly on that list. So brief overview, as long as I went, brief overview. So many other names we could talk about here on the show, but a lot of coverage coming to Sooners Illustrated as a number of these recruits hit campus for this top 15 matchup.
It's just crazy. I'm looking up guys as you're mentioning them, and it's just the talent is just off the charts. I mean, Brian Swanson is a top 75 player, top 10 tackle. You mentioned Katie Jones, who's up there in Jinx, who's one of the best players in Oklahoma. You talk about Deuce Gerald's, he's a top 100 player in the composite. Like, it's just like every name you mention is like, geez. So, yeah, that kind of weekend. And again, like you said, not that OU fans needed more motivation to provide a big-time atmosphere. I don't really think, honestly, they needed any of this stuff for this. But, Danny Stutzman calling them out and everything else. But they're going to be ready, and it's going to be a heck of a weekend. And a lot of big-name players going to be Norman. All the eyes in college football, just kind of in general, are on Norman this weekend. So it's a big chance to deliver for everyone.
And I wanted to mention really quick, Josh, if the fans deliver in the stands and this team delivers on the field, Oklahoma will have, I'm not going to say its entirety, but a large majority of its 2025 commit class on campus weekend to help recruit these other prospects. So if Norman is what we think it might be and Oklahoma pulls off a win, you're going to have a lot of recruits talking to each other about what the future might look like in Norman, Oklahoma.
100% going to be a fun weekend. Do want to get your thoughts. We're going to have James in here in a minute to talk about some in-state stuff. But before you go, I do want to make sure you get your thoughts on the game. Where are you kind of at? I mean, it's been funny because, the general consensus nationally, I feel like, and maybe I'm way off, is that this is a mismatch. And Tennessee is, got a chance to really blow this thing open. Obviously, Oklahoma, home underdog, which is extremely rare. I think it's happened literally in you and I's lifetime. You count on one hand the amount of times it's happened. Home underdog, and it's a relatively sizable underdog, by a full touchdown. Where are you kind of at on this game, and what do you think happens on Saturday? Can Oklahoma pull this off? Where are you kind of feeling right now on Thursday?
Yeah, so I have several thoughts. I don't think I have time to empty the clip. But let me lead off with this, and I touched on it briefly. I think that this is the type of game where I'm at right now where, long story short, you kind of throw pride out the window. And what do I mean by that? There may be a hesitancy to either, from a coaching perspective, empty the playbook, get a little gimmicky, pull out some trick plays, whatever. There may be a hesitancy from a fan perspective to not look cool and get up and scream and make noises that you probably wouldn't make in your everyday life as it's third down and 7. But this to me is one of the more defining football games for this program that we've seen in a very long time. Because if you think about it, number one, this is going to be the game, whether it's fair or not, that Oklahoma makes its initial impression as an SEC program on both the conference and the college football landscape. Whatever the result of this may be, that's how Oklahoma is ultimately going to be perceived as an SEC member for the weeks to come. And again, whether that's fair or not, we can have a discussion about if that's fair for people to do. But Judgment Day is coming, and now's the time to make this about as great of an atmosphere and about as highly contested of a football game as there is. So whether that's, in my opinion, pulling out all the stops, I'm talking throwing the kitchen sink, if we're talking on field, to making that atmosphere second to none, something we haven't really seen since that Ohio State game in Norman several years ago. This is what you got to do. Because from an on and off the field perspective, this game's going to carry a lot of weight. This is ultimately going to have an impact on the program that will be felt for a very long time. And then beyond that, Josh, if we slim it down, like, I genuinely do believe this game kind of defines how this season is going to go for OU. Because if you look at it, Tennessee's a buzzsaw. I mean, they look like one of the best teams in college football. But if you lose this game, then you go to Auburn, and for whatever reason you slip up, it is tough sledding the rest of the way. You know, like
it is. It's
crazy because I was thinking about this almost a few weeks ago. We were talking about when we're trying to figure out what Oklahoma might look like on the schedule. We're talking about this game as maybe one that they could win. And now we're talking about Tennessee being a touchdown plus favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a really tough test, but like Oklahoma's kind of, it's not a must-win game, but like in an ideal situation, you find a way to pull this one off on your home field in your SEC opener to set the table for maybe a little bit more forgivable slate the rest of the way in the SEC. So breaking it down real quick, just some things that I've been thinking about offensively. If I'm Oklahoma, I'm sitting in that offensive meeting room, I would be sitting there going, we got to do what other teams do to us. And that's quick game, max protect, attack the edges, do whatever it takes to get things rolling. And one thing about Tennessee that I wanted to mention, I've got like football philosophies and theories, and Tennessee's kind of the basis of one of my own. I have always viewed time of possession as a pretty fraudulent statistic because, in my opinion, I don't give a damn if my time of possession is 3.5 minutes if I'm scoring a touchdown in a minute and a half every possession. I mean, that's like Tennessee's mantra at times is like, man, let's go score. So why I say that, time of possession is going to be key for Oklahoma, not, in my opinion, because you need to hold the ball. Yes, you want to hold the ball, but time of possession in this game for Oklahoma is going to mean how well were they able to extend drives and be consistent on the offensive side of the ball? Because I'm going to be honest with you, if they show what they have shown on third down, for example, in this game against that defensive line, like, I don't know, you know? So in my opinion, you have to do your best to replicate what was seen in that first drive against Tulane on the offensive side of the ball. Get Jackson Arnold throwing the ball quick, get him in a rhythm. Don't let Tennessee get after you. And if you can move the ball that way, all of a sudden you are controlling time of possession. You're keeping Tennessee's offense off the field. But more than that, possession efficiency has always been, for me, the key defining statistic in a football game. Defensively, we can talk about the obvious stuff, right? Like trying to get Nico, a young quarterback, off his game in a road environment. Number one, the ability to take on personnel versatility. I think there are going to be a lot of people out there more casually in the college football landscape who go into this game and think, okay, Tennessee's about to go 4 wide and throw the ball over the yard. When in reality, this is one of the best running teams in the country. And just like they can go empty sets, they can go 12 personnel and run the ball down your throat in the blink of an eye. So the ability to mix things up defensively while still being able to take on whatever Tennessee has on the field is key. And then I think the edge rushers for Oklahoma, Josh, in this game are where I'm going to have my eyes. Obviously, defense, whatever. But those edge guys for Oklahoma, they have to be difference makers, whether that's in the run, setting the edge, being physical against this offensive line for Tennessee that's got big dudes at tackle, and making it hard for Tennessee to run the ball, to the ability to rush the passer and get to Nico when the crowd is behind this team on third down. Like, I think the defensive tackles have been really good. I think we know what this defense is in the back end. R. Mason Thomas, Ethan Downs, Trace Ford, all those guys, they have to be game changers because if they are, Oklahoma's got a chance to win the football game. That's where I'm at. It's going to be a really fun one. I think this is going to be one of the better atmospheres, and I think it's got a chance to be a really competitive game. It's a really fascinating setting, and I can't wait to see what happens Saturday night.
Nobody likes it. Not the best part of the gig. Score prediction. Where are you thinking? How does this thing fall?
So what line are you operating under? Let me clarify, because I've seen 6.5 to 7.5. Are you calling 7 flat?
Yeah, let's see. Depends on where you look, of course. I got usually I've seen about 7.
Okay.
Let's see here. 7. I got 7. 7 on the dot.
I was gonna, if you were gonna give me 6.5, I was gonna go like 31-24 and just give a half-point cover to Tennessee.
You can do it. You can just call it a push.
I did that last year accidentally because I didn't know what line you were using, and I think I took that as an L in my record, and I thought about it every day since then.
Yeah, so I'm keeping track of the records. It got too hairy on us.
I mean, I think Tennessee as a touchdown favorite is a perfect line from Vegas. But if you're giving me 7 flat, and obviously no one wants me to pick a push, I'll go 31-21 Tennessee. Look, if there is a reality where that Oklahoma offensive line holds up against one of the most talented and deepest defensive lines in the country, I need to see it, right? Like, if that Oklahoma offensive line's not only going to push those dudes off the ball in the run game, but also pass protect at a high rate, when they go, 6 deep at defensive tackle and probably 8, 9 deep in general, it's just hard for me to pick a game knowing that an ultimate strength for one team is an ultimate weakness for another.
Sure.
And it's tough. And I think Tennessee's offense, because of how multidimensional they are from a personnel and play calling standpoint, I mean, this is one of the tougher tests for Brent Venables' defense in quite a while. So I think Tennessee wins the football game. I think it's really close, but ultimately I do have concerns about Oklahoma's ability to get things rolling on the offensive line. And if I'm proven wrong, I would welcome that, because that would ultimately mean a complete change in the trajectory of the football game. But what we've seen through 3 weeks, I don't know, Josh. It's just hard for me to see Oklahoma being able to match up with Tennessee's deep defensive line for 4 quarters of play and carrying that through momentum-wise into the end of the football game.
It's completely fair, and I'm excited to see what happens. We're all looking forward to it. We'll have the game preview tomorrow. Tom, James, myself will lock in our picks and give our final thoughts on the game and all that good stuff. But great analysis and thoughts from Collin. Obviously, great show. We're not done just yet. James is going to hop in here in just a second, and we'll get some in-state recruiting stuff. He's been at a lot of high school games, things like that. So we'll talk to him about that. CK, appreciate you as always. We'll catch up with you next week. And, yeah, great stuff as always, man. Good luck on all your travels. I'm sure you'll be getting out to lots of games again, and you'll be as dialed into this game on Saturday as anyone. It's going to be a fun one.
Yep, got a few more games coming up. Another down and back to Houston tonight. But then I am very much looking forward, like everybody else, to sitting down on the couch and watching Tennessee and Oklahoma go to battle. Welcome home to Josh Heupel, by the way. I think that's pretty cool. It's going to be an awesome scene.
Pretty cool.
So, and sign up for 50% off, folks. I think it's a really cool move by corporate to give Oklahoma fans the opportunity to celebrate that they deserve.
Pinkertons for you?
Dude, you know my love and appreciation for good Texas barbecue, and Pinkertons is a must stop for me when I'm in Houston. So
that's a yes. All right, we'll get James in here and get the back end of the show now. All right, we now welcome in James D. Jackson, recruiting in-state especially expert. We're going to bring him on. It's going to be a new thing on Thursdays. We're going to have James on at the end of the shows to talk about some in-state stuff. He's getting to high school games all the time, keeping up with a lot of the in-state kids. So we figure, why not have a carved out space for him to kind of keep up with what he has been doing?
Oh, yeah.
James, welcome. Catch us up, man. I guess I let it in pretty well right there. What are some in-state guys that you've been catching up to? I mean, I know you've been getting out to games pretty much every week of the season so far, seeing guys, talking to guys. What are some things to catch OU fans up on inside the state of Oklahoma?
Yeah, and I want to talk about two guys that, I mean, we're fairly confident that their OU is really interested in them, and that they can possibly be on that line to go on to OU some years down the line. And I mean, I started with the week one where I was out looking at Caden Jones, a running back from Jenks High School. I mean, a very good outing from him. I mean, individually, I know Jenks lost that game, but it was very impressive what he did on the field with his 2 touchdowns, 101 yards overall. I mean, he looked really good. I mean, he's an OU legacy guy. And so, I mean, I know OU fans really want to see him in an OU uniform like his father was. And so I really like what he has. I think he has all the talent in the world. I mean, he's number one back in the state for a reason. I mean, we have him there.
A guy that, Collin and I were just talking about will be in town.
There you go.
For the Tennessee game.
Yeah, there you go. He's a perfect guy. I mean, he's very interested, I think, and OU's really interested in him as well. And then I'll take it to last week. I mean, I went out to see Mason James, who's another really, really big guy that OU wants. They're going after. They were the first ones to offer him, a scholarship, a guy out of Norman North, a wide receiver, and got to see his talents on the field. I mean, we look at his film. Last year, he had 17 touchdowns, Josh. I mean, so obviously it was very incredible. He was a down the field type of guy. And then last week, he was kind of more a short yardage receiver for them as Norman North was kind of struggling to get their offense going. But he had a lot of receptions, and I would say 9 or 10 receptions from him, just short yardage situations, seeing what he can do in that type of role. And a lot of people were eyeing on him. I mean, even the student section from the opposing fans knew about him. And it was that type of thing where he was getting haggled and things like that. So, I mean, everybody knew he was the best player on the field. So really watching out for him. So that was really fun to see. I mean, you look at these OU guys and what's been going on.
100%, and Mason's a guy that we've seen at, camps in the summer and things like that. Obviously just playing his high school ball just right down the road there at Norman North. So we'll see, how that shakes out, and obviously one of the best guys in 2026 in Oklahoma. Just, I guess, as far as you, and then we'll let you get out of here. But I guess within the state in the 26 and 27 class, the overall talent level where Oklahoma kind of sits, like just, I guess, kind of from a broad view, how do you kind of feel like those classes are shaping up just in terms of the talent, also how OU is making headway? Because obviously, we've talked about guys before, not on air, but guys like Colton Yarbrough, who's committed to Arkansas. Yep. Adam Austin at Lawton MacArthur, he's going to Arkansas as well, right? So just, I guess, where are OU kind of sitting in state? Because they were doing so well for a couple of classes there, and it feels like that's thinned out a little bit. Is that the case for you? I guess kind of paint a better picture than I would be able to.
Well, like you said, OU was doing a really, really good job of
all the Carl Albert guys.
Yeah, and so now you got those Carl Albert guys that are leading the way for this 25 class, as you mentioned. The 26 class, Colton Yarbrough, I guess he was just a guy that they never kind of had interest. Like they never caught interest because he had offers from everywhere except OU, seemed like. So maybe he just didn't fit their scheme of what they wanted to do, going after him. So it's like they didn't really try in that certain situation to go after him. So that kind of leads to him going to, a different place than what you would normally think of the top guy in Oklahoma. You want to keep him in state. It didn't seem like that was the case for him. And so you see these other potential, guys. But as I talked about, Caden Jones and Mason James, 26 guys that OU is really pushing for. I mean, there's more guys down the line. There's Samaj Stanford. You talking about that 27 class. I mean, another guy from Jenks who has a really good connection with OU right now, defensive back. So, I mean, there's guys down the line that's not locked up yet. But obviously that's, as cycles go, that's what'll happen. So the 26 is the next cycle to really pay attention to, as I know you and Collin have probably been talking about a lot on it. So just keep it there, man. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And like we said, I mean, in Oklahoma, this staff has made a much better effort and done a much better job at keeping guys in state. I mean, in 2025, we talked about all those Carl Albert guys, Marcus James and Tristan Haynes and Trinae Washington, but also, of course, CJ Nix out in Weatherford and Alexander Shield Knight. I mean, they've done a really good job recruiting in state. And so expect more of that to come and certainly in 26 and 27, like you said. All right, so we'll have James on every Thursday, do a little roundup for in-state guys of us. So that'll be a new addition to the Thursday show, and keep an eye out for that week to week throughout the season. We'll be back tomorrow, James, myself, and Tom Green for the game preview, Oklahoma, Tennessee. Going to be a fun one, kind of a big game, maybe. We'll talk that around, and we'll break all that down, all that good stuff. So that'll be tomorrow on the YouTube channel and in the podcast feed. Again, one more time, be sure to subscribe the Sooners Illustrated, 50% off an annual membership right now. Special deal for the SEC opener. So be sure to take advantage of that while you still can. That's it for now. For Collin Kennedy earlier, James D. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you guys next time right back here on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.